Let me ask you something before we even begin. When was the last time something happened, something completely outside your control, and it completely destroyed your mood, your day, maybe even your week? Maybe someone said something that cut deep. Maybe a plan fell apart. Maybe life just decided to throw everything at you at once. And in that moment, you felt helpless. Reactive. Like a boat being tossed around by waves you never saw coming. Now here's what I want you to think about. There was a man. A real man. A man who had nothing. Not just things were tough, kind of nothing. I mean, he was owned. His body was someone else's property. He could not decide where to sleep, what to eat, where to go. He had no civil rights. No voice. No freedom in the eyes of the world. And yet, this man became one of the freest human beings who ever lived. His name was Epictetus. And what he discovered in the depths of slavery, in the most brutal, humiliating conditions a human being can face, is something that modern psychology, neuroscience, and therapy are still catching up to today. This is not a motivational video. I am not here to hype you up for 20 minutes and leave you feeling good for an hour before everything goes back to normal. What you are about to hear is a philosophy of life, a complete inner operating system. A way of thinking, responding, and existing that has survived over 2,000 years because it works, not in theory, but in real life, in real pain, in real chaos. So stay with me. Because by the end of this, something is going to shift. Part 1, the men behind the philosophy. To truly understand Epictetus, you need to understand where he came from, because his philosophy was not born in a library. It was born in chains. Epictetus was born around 50 AD in Hierapolis, in what is now modern-day Turkey. He was born a slave. From the very beginning, his life belonged to someone else. He was eventually brought to Rome and became the property of Epictetus, a powerful secretary under the Emperor Nero. By all accounts, his master was cruel. There are accounts, though disputed, that Epictetus would twist Epictetus's leg as a demonstration of power, and Epictetus would simply look at him calmly and say, "You are going to break it." And when it broke, he reportedly said, "Did I not tell you?" No screaming. No begging. No bitterness. Just observation. Just calm. This was not indifference. This was not weakness or numbness. This was the result of something Epictetus had trained in himself, the ability to separate what was happening to his body from what was happening to his soul. He eventually gained his freedom and went on to open a school of philosophy in Nicopolis. Students traveled from across the Roman world to sit at his feet. Among them were future emperors, senators, and generals. And yet Epictetus himself lived simply. Almost nothing by material standards. A small lamp. A straw mat. A door without a lock because he had nothing worth stealing. He never wrote a single word himself. Everything we know about his teachings comes from his student Arian, who took careful notes and compiled them into two works, the Discourses and the shorter, more concentrated Enchiridion, which simply means handbook. That handbook has been carried into battle, into prison cells, into hospital wards, into moments of devastating personal loss, for over 2,000 years. Because what Epictetus left behind was not a set of clever quotes. It was a complete system for living with dignity, no matter what. Part 2, the Great Divide, the foundation of everything. If there is one idea at the absolute core of Epictetus's philosophy, one idea that everything else grows out of, it is this. Some things are within our control. And some things are not, ***. This sounds obvious. Almost too simple. But sit with it for a moment, because most people intellectually understand this and yet spend their entire lives acting as if it isn't true. What is within your control? Your opinions. Your judgments. Your desires. Your actions. Your responses. The effort you put in. The character you choose to embody moment to moment. What is not within your control? Your reputation. Other people's opinions of you. The outcome of your efforts. Whether people like you. Whether the economy cooperates. Whether your body stays healthy. Whether the people you love make good decisions. The past. The future. The weather. Traffic. Politics. Now here is where most people go wrong. We pour enormous amounts of emotional energy, anxiety, frustration, anger, grief, into the second category. Things we cannot control. And we neglect, or feel helpless about, the first category, the things we actually can shape. Epictetus called this the dichotomy of control, and he was ruthless about it. He did not say, try to focus more on what you can control. He said, with complete conviction, that if you are suffering, it is almost certainly because you are confusing the two categories. You are treating something outside your control as if it should be inside your control. And that confusion is the source of nearly all human psychological misery. Think about something that is stressing you out right now. Just pick one thing. Now ask yourself, honestly, is the thing that's stressing you out actually within your control? Or are you anxious about an outcome, a reaction, a possibility, a person's behavior, none of which you can actually determine? If you are honest, you will likely find that most of your anxiety lives in the second category. Things you cannot control. Things that may never happen. Things that have already happened and cannot be changed. Epictetus's invitation, and it is a demanding one, is to draw a hard line. To say, this is mine to work on, and this is not mine to carry. Not because you don't care, but because carrying what is not yours destroys you, and changes nothing. Part 3, 3 principles that will change how you live. Principle 1, train your perception. It is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things. This is perhaps the most quoted line from Epictetus, and for good reason. It is the entire foundation of what we now call cognitive psychology, laid out in a single sentence 2,000 years before the field existed. Let's be specific about what this means. Something happens. Let's say you send a message to someone and they don't respond. That is the event. Neutral. Just a fact. Now your mind does something, it interprets. It adds a story. They're ignoring me. They must be angry. Maybe I said something wrong. They probably don't respect me. And suddenly you feel anxious, hurt, maybe angry. But notice, none of that came from the event itself. The event was silence. The suffering came from your story about the silence. Epictetus asks you to become a warrior of your own mind. To watch your thoughts the way a sentinel watches the gates of a city, carefully, without letting every hostile thought march right in and take over. This does not mean pretending things are fine when they're not. It does not mean suppressing emotion. It means examining your interpretation before you let it determine your entire emotional state. Ask, is this thought actually true? Is this the only interpretation possible? What would a calm, wise person think in this situation? Modern science calls this cognitive restructuring, and it is the backbone of cognitive behavioral therapy, which is currently one of the most evidence-based, rigorously tested approaches in all of psychology. Aaron Beck, considered the father of CBT, demonstrated in landmark research in 1976 that distorted automatic thoughts, the stories we instantly tell ourselves about events, are the primary driver of anxiety, depression, and chronic stress. He was essentially rediscovering what Epictetus had already mapped in detail. Change how you interpret what happens to you, and you do not just feel better. You literally rewire the neural pathways in your brain over time. Your default responses change. Your emotional baseline shifts. This is not wishful thinking. This is documented neuroscience. Principle 2, love your fate. The Latin phrase amor fati, love of fate, was popularized by the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche centuries later, but the concept runs through Stoic philosophy like a river. Epictetus put it this way. Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life. Now I want to be very careful here, because this is the principle that people most often misunderstand. Amor fati is not passive. It is not giving up. It is not saying nothing matters and nothing is worth fighting for. It is something far more powerful and far more difficult. It is the practice of not being at war with reality. Think about how much of your suffering comes not from what is actually happening, but from your resistance to it. From the continuous internal cry of, "This shouldn't be happening. This isn't fair. This wasn't supposed to go this way." Reality doesn't care about what was supposed to happen. Reality is what it is. And every moment you spend fighting it mentally, wishing it were different, resenting that it isn't, is a moment you are not using to actually respond to it. The Stoic doesn't say, "This is fine." The Stoic says, "This is what is, now what do I do with it?" Modern psychology calls this radical acceptance, and it is a central concept in both acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, and mindfulness-based approaches. Research by Hayes and Eifert in 2006 demonstrated something remarkable, that the practice of fully accepting the present moment, even when it is painful, significantly reduces psychological suffering and actually increases a sense of well-being. Meanwhile, experiential avoidance, which is the psychological term for refusing to accept what is one of the strongest predictors of anxiety disorders and depression. In other words, science has now confirmed what Epictetus knew from personal experience in a Roman slave household. Fighting reality doesn't change it. It just exhausts you. Loving your fate, accepting what is with open eyes and a strong back, is not weakness. It is the foundation of every courageous action that follows. Principle 3, train yourself to want what happens. This third principle is perhaps the most advanced, and the most counterintuitive. Epictetus did not just say, accept what happens. He went further. He said train your will itself, train your desires, so that what you want and what is actually happening begin to align. This sounds almost impossible from a Western perspective where we are constantly trained to want more, want different, want better, want now. But think about what it would actually feel like, genuinely, not as a performance, to not be at war with your own life. To wake up and not immediately feel the gap between where you are and where you think you should be. To move through your day responding to what is actually in front of you, rather than constantly grieving the distance between reality and expectation. This is what Epictetus was pointing at. In psychology, the closest parallel is what researchers call the internal locus of control, the deep belief that while you do not control external events, you are fundamentally responsible for your own responses. That your inner life is yours to shape, regardless of what the world does. Studies by Rotter in 1966, and expanded upon by Lefcourt in 1976, found that individuals with a strong internal locus of control are measurably more resilient, more disciplined, more effective under pressure, and significantly less likely to develop depression or anxiety disorders, even when exposed to the same stressors as others. The difference was not their circumstances. It was their relationship to their circumstances. Epictetus did not call this locus of control. He called it prohairesis, the faculty of deliberate choice. The one thing, he said, that is always and absolutely yours. No one can take your capacity to choose your response. Not your employer. Not your government. Not illness. Not loss. Not even death. That faculty, that inner freedom, is what Epictetus built his entire life around protecting. Part 4, Ancient Wisdom Meets Modern Science. Let's step back for a moment and look at the bigger picture. What we have been discussing is not ancient self-help. It is not feel-good philosophy invented by someone who had an easy life and wanted to sound wise. This was forged in slavery. In physical pain. In a life where Epictetus had every reason in the world to be bitter, broken, and consumed by resentment. And yet the ideas he developed, the cognitive restructuring, the radical acceptance, the internal locus of control, are now among the most empirically validated concepts in all of modern psychological science. CBT, which is essentially Epictetan philosophy in clinical form, has been tested in hundreds of randomized controlled trials and is consistently shown to be as effective as medication for depression and anxiety, often with longer-lasting results. Mindfulness-based approaches, which carry the DNA of Stoic acceptance practices, are now used in hospitals, schools, military training programs, and corporate leadership development across the world. The neuroscience of emotional regulation shows us that when we practice reappraising situations, looking at them differently rather than reacting automatically, we actually reduce activation in the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, and increase activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for deliberate, clear thinking. In other words, Epictetus's training program for the mind is literally changing brain structure. Not metaphorically. Literally. Stoic wisdom is not magic. It is not mysticism. It is not outdated ancient thinking. It is philosophy as neuroscience. And neuroscience as philosophy, ***. Part 5, 2 men, 1 life, 1 difference. Picture 2 men waking up tomorrow morning. Same alarm. Same traffic. Same difficult boss. Same complicated relationship. Same financial pressure. Same uncertain future. The first man wakes up and immediately begins to react. The news irritates him. The traffic infuriates him. His colleagues' comment ruins his afternoon. By evening, he is exhausted, not from the work he did, but from the emotional weight he carried all day. Weight that was never his to carry. The second man wakes up and does something different. Before he checks his phone, before he engages with the world, he spends a few minutes in quiet. He reminds himself of what is his to control today, his attitude, his effort, his character. He decides, in advance, who he is going to be. And then he steps into exactly the same world as the first man. Same events. Completely different experience. What separates them is not talent. Not luck. Not circumstance. It is the philosophy living inside them. Ryan Holiday, one of the foremost modern writers on Stoicism, captures it precisely. You do not control what happens, but you always control how you respond. That gap, between event and response, is where your freedom lives. Jordan Peterson, approaching it from a different angle, says that life is suffering, but what you choose to do with that suffering is what defines the shape of your character and the quality of your life. The echoes of Epictetus are everywhere in modern thought. You just have to train your ear to hear them. Part 6, what this looks like in daily life. Philosophy that doesn't touch your actual daily life is just entertainment. So what does Epictetan living actually look like in practice? It looks like pausing, genuinely pausing, before reacting to something that irritates you, and asking, is this worth my peace? It looks like sitting with discomfort instead of immediately reaching for your phone or food or distraction. Just sitting. Letting it be there. Not fighting it. It looks like doing your absolute best work on something and then genuinely releasing the outcome, because the outcome was never yours to own. It looks like someone criticizing you and being able to honestly ask, is there truth in this? If yes, thank them and grow. If no, let it pass without letting it lodge in you. It looks like a morning practice, even 5 minutes, where you deliberately return to what matters. Where you choose your values before the world chooses your reactions for you. This is not a philosophy of passivity. Epictetus was not passive. He built a school. He taught. He engaged with the world fully and fiercely. But he did it from a place of inner stability that nothing external could shake. That is the goal. Not to feel nothing. Not to become detached from life. But to participate fully, with your whole heart, from a foundation that cannot be broken. Part 7, be a mountain. Epictetus does not want you to be a stone. Cold. Unmoved. Disconnected from life, from people, from feeling. He wants you to be a mountain. A mountain is not indifferent to the storm. The storm crashes against it, fully, violently, without mercy. The mountain feels every bit of it. But it does not move. Not because it is numb. But because it is rooted in something deeper than the storm can reach. That is what this philosophy builds in you. Not armor that keeps life out. Roots that keep you standing while life moves through you. The art of living, real living, is not about accumulating comfort or avoiding pain. It is about developing the kind of inner architecture that can hold weight. That can weather grief, failure, uncertainty, loss, and not collapse. That can look at chaos and say, I see you. I feel you. And I am still here. End arrow ending, they will come back for this. You have come to the end of this video. But I want to ask you something, honestly. Of everything you just heard, what is the one thing that hit closest to home? What is the one idea that you already know you need to apply, not tomorrow, not someday, but today? Because that is where this work begins. Not in understanding Epictetus. Not in agreeing with him. In practicing what he pointed at. In taking one small, concrete action today that reflects this philosophy. Write down one sentence from what you heard. Put it somewhere you will see it tomorrow morning. Not as a reminder to feel good, as a challenge. A question to ask yourself, did I live this today? And here is what I want you to know. The next time life presses hard against you. The next time something happens that you did not ask for, did not deserve, and cannot change. The next time you feel the weight of everything that is outside your control pressing down on you. Come back here. Not because this video has the answer. But because the practice of returning to this kind of thinking, the deliberate act of reorienting yourself toward what is actually yours, is itself the practice. Every time you return, something deepens. Every time you ask the question, what is mine to control here, you are exercising the one muscle that Epictetus spent his entire life building. And over time, slowly, quietly, undramatically, you will notice something different. Not that your life has become easier. Not that the storms have stopped coming. But that you have become the kind of person who does not need the storms to stop. That is the art of living. That is the gift Epictetus left chained in a Roman slave house 2,000 years ago, waiting for you to pick it up. Epictetus's final word. Asterisk, no man is free who is not master of himself. Asterisk. Asterisk, if something in this moved you, like it, share it, and subscribe. But more than that, take one line. Write it. Live it. Because wisdom that stays in your head is just information. Wisdom you act on, that is transformation, asterisk.